There are empty homes piling up on the US housing market right now in the summer of 2022. Inventory is surging, price cuts are surging, and the housing crash has started. But here's what is very interesting about this inventory pileup. It's happening in the cities where people least expected it to happen. If we take a look at this map showing the inventory growth in different counties in America, the number of homes for sale this year compared to last year, check out the areas in blue. These are the parts of the country with the biggest surge in inventory. If we go to a place like Collin County in Dallas, more than 2 times as many homes on the market today as there was a year ago. That's the sign of a beginning of a crash. If we go to Maricopa County in Phoenix, we can see a similar situation playing out. If we head up to Oregon and Idaho, we can see a similar situation playing out. Now, here's the thing I want you all to pay attention to, is not just where is the inventory surging, but why is it surging? You have to understand why it's surging in order to see where the housing market is going. So I'm going to change this graph real quick from the inventory by county to the migration by county. I don't know if you guys caught that. I just changed this graph now to show the cities and the counties that had the biggest migration during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. And what do you notice, folks? The areas in blue with the most migration, we're looking here in Dallas, we're looking here in Western Florida, the most migration in 2020 and 2021, well, the most migration now has the biggest inventory pileup of empty homes on the housing market in 2022. This is where the housing crash is starting. And this is a really fascinating trend, everyone, because I don't think many people expected this, that the boom towns that had so many people moving in during the pandemic across Florida and Texas and Tennessee and Idaho, these boom towns, these boom counties are the first now to see the housing crash unfold with the biggest surge in inventory occurring. So we've seen a flip in the migration, we've seen a flip in the housing market narrative, and all those places that everyone told you all the home buyers were moving to over the last 2 years, well, they're no longer moving there. And let me give you all a specific example to clarify this point so you can really understand what I'm talking about here. So if we dig down deep and look at Texas, for instance, these are the different counties in Texas with the biggest inventory surge, the most empty homes sitting on the market. What we can see is that big inventory surges in places like Hays and Bastrop County around Austin. These were high migration areas. We also have a big inventory surge around Dallas, which was a high migration area. But folks, take a look at Harris County in Houston. Harris County in Houston actually has declining inventory over the last year. Why is that? I'm going to get to that in a second. Let's take a look at Florida, everyone. What's going on in Florida? If we zoom in on Florida, we can see that most counties in Florida have an increase in inventory. Very important you all understand this. On the western coast, Northport, a doubling of inventory. If we go to Collier County and Naples, a doubling of inventory. But then what do you see down here in southeast Florida, everyone? Broward and Miami-Dade County and Miami actually have a reduction in homes for sale year over year. What's going on here? What explains this? Well, I'll tell you what explains this, everyone. If we take a look at all the counties in Florida and compare their migration growth during the pandemic to the inventory growth over the last year, what do you see, everyone? The more that a county in Florida had people move in over the last 2 years, the more that there are homes for sale on the market today. And the relationship is crazy strong, an R squared of 0.57. Meanwhile, on the bottom left, you can see Miami-Dade and Broward County. They actually lost people during the pandemic. People moved out of Miami in 2020 and 2021. But interestingly, inventory is still down. And why am I spending so much time making you guys understand this relationship, this seemingly counterintuitive relationship between migration during the pandemic and the inventory surge right now? And the point is this. You guys need to understand that we are in a new housing market in 2022. What occurred in 2020 and 2021 is no longer occurring, and the housing markets that we're going to see have the biggest crash going forward are the ones that boomed the most during the pandemic. So if you're someone buying or looking to buy in a market like a Phoenix or a Boise or a Salt Lake or a Denver or a Dallas or a Jacksonville or a Tampa, you're likely being told in your local market by realtors and investors that there's so many people moving in and that's going to prevent a housing crash. Well, folks, That is wrong because the data is clear. The more people that were moving into a city or a county over the last 2 years, the more that inventory is exploding. And the reason is this: simply put, people aren't moving to the same places that they were 2 years ago. I mean, the pandemic is largely in the rearview mirror, and that has reduced the demand for people to move to states like Texas and Florida, and specifically to move to the outer skirts of these cities. Let me give you an example, for instance, in Dallas. Let's take a look at inventory in Dallas by zip code. That's what we're looking at on this graph. And if you guys are interested in this data and you're not a channel member, make sure to hit the join button below, because my channel members have access to these graphs and have already been looking at these graphs for a couple days. But I want to show you what's going on in the Dallas metro more broadly. Take a look at the orange areas in the center of Dallas, in the center of Fort Worth. We still see declining inventory year over year in some of these urban areas and suburbs near the urban areas in Dallas and in Fort Worth. So if you're a home buyer looking in Dallas in these orange zip codes right now, you're still going to be very frustrated because inventory is still very low and it hasn't bounced back yet. But if you were to go up north to a zip code in a town called Prosper in Collin County, there's, get this folks, a 370% increase in inventory year over year. So this speaks to not just that maybe there's fewer people moving to Dallas overall, but there's fewer people in Dallas making that move to the northern suburbs, which is why we're seeing such crazy inventory increases in the northern suburbs in Dallas. So folks, this is not your pandemic housing market anymore. You need to update your thinking as far as the best places to buy and where people are moving, because there's also another trend occurring. It's not just the demand and where people are moving and the fact that fewer people are making the move to the suburbs and rural areas. It's also supply. You have to think about, where are home builders building? Because we have a massive backlog of housing units under construction right now. And when you start analyzing where these home builders are building, you're going to see that it's all in the same counties that are seeing the demand decrease, everyone. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let me put some data to this, because it's really important you understand what the home building is saying in addition to the demand. So if we take a look at this scatter plot, we're taking a look on the x-axis at housing permits pulled over the last 2 years by home builders as a percentage of housing stock. How many homes are being permitted and built? And we're comparing that to the increase in inventory year over year. Very important that you guys understand this. Take a look at the relationship. The more that there were housing units permitted over the last 2 years in a county, the more that inventory is growing. So we go to Williamson County in Austin, 150% inventory growth. Why? Well, housing permitting increased by 12%. If we go to Comal County in San Antonio, similar story. If we go to Canyon County in Boise, Utah County in Provo, Johnston County in Raleigh. So the other thing that you all need to understand is that the areas where home builders are very active, these areas are going to continue to see a pileup of empty homes on the market. They are going to see the housing crash happen first and happen more fiercely in counties and zip codes where there's a lot of home building, because folks, just over the last couple months, we're starting to see finally the housing completions are coming on. Finally, the home builder material and labor shortages are easing, right? And home builders are starting to get these units that they started into completion. It's important to remember that there's still another 2 million backlogged housing units either under construction or permitted that are going to slam the market over the next 1 to 2 years. And when they do, they're going to slam the markets in these counties to the top right of this graph, which are already seeing a big surge in inventory. Well, they're going to see an even bigger surge in inventory going forward in these high home building counties, everyone. So very important you all understand this. I'm going to get to your requests in 1 second, but I just want to make this known because I see especially a lot of realtors out there. They're spreading a lot of misinformation about the housing market right now. Like, we're seeing such historic spikes in the amount of homes for sale, and yet we still have so many realtors and real estate investors. I don't want to accuse them of lying about the housing market, but they're spreading misinformation. They're still trying to FOMO people into buying in a market like Phoenix or Dallas or Austin when the writing is on the wall, folks. These markets are crashing, and they're crashing hard, but specifically in the outlying suburbs. That's where it's happening first. So everyone, get your requests ready. I want to see what cities you want me to cover here. What markets do you want me to look at as far as inventory surge? And we're going to actually look at this by zip code. We're going to look at this by zip code, everyone, because it's really important that you all understand not just what's going on in your metro and county more broadly, but what's going on in your zip code. So if some of my channel members want to come through with some requests for cities that they want to see me cover right now, let's start with a market like Tampa. Tampa's a really interesting one, everyone, because this was a boom town. Still might kind of technically be a boom town. But if we look at the inventory growth in Tampa, we can see a very similar story to what we saw in a place like Dallas, right? Where we have blue in all these like northern suburbs in Pasco County, 248% inventory surge. 213% inventory surge in all of these northern suburban counties. It's also happening in southern Hillsborough County. But if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that, in more urban Tampa, inventory is still down. In more urban St. Petersburg, inventory is still down. So this is a consistent trend that's occurring across all metros in America, where we're seeing this slam of inventory and empty homes in the suburbs, still tight though in urban locations. So we just looked at Tampa. Why don't we look at Miami in more detail, everyone? I know I got a lot of people in Florida. I'm going to cover a lot of cities and markets in this live stream. So if I haven't covered your market yet, stay with me because I will. Now, if we look at Miami, we can see in general a lot more orange. That just means in general inventory is lower in Miami. In Hollywood, it's down by 33%. In North Miami, it's down by 31%. But if you start going south into some southwestern parts of the metro, inventory is going up. And if we go further north, if we head up more towards Palm Beach, we can see inventory in West Palm Beach is starting to go up. So Miami is still a very tight market, but we're seeing signs of life in terms of home supply in certain pockets, everyone. And guys, when you do your request, do your metro area. Don't do your zip code specifically, because I'm not going to know where your zip code is off the bat if you just do it that way. Let's zoom on over to the mountain region and go to Denver. I know I got a lot of people out there in Colorado. And if we take a look at Denver, everyone, we can see huge increases in inventory on the outer edges of the metro. Like we go down to Parker in Douglas County, plus 120% increase in homes for sale year over year. If we go to Morrison in Jefferson County, plus 171% increase in inventory. If we go to Adams County in the north, plus 120%. But same trend, everyone. If we zoom in on Denver, these more urban locations where there's going to be more condos, there's going to be more townhomes, we see inventory is still down year over year. And to be clear, and I'm going to get to more of your requests in a second, this doesn't mean the urban locations won't crash. It simply means that in the order of operations, we're seeing the suburban and rural locations go first. And that makes sense, everyone. It's always going to be, in any type of downturn, the most speculative boom asset that's going to go down first. Like we saw that with technology stocks. It was the most speculative technology stocks that started going down in 2021 before the broader market went down. Well, it's the same thing here with housing. It's the most speculative cities and the most speculative locations where the buyer demand is dropping and the home building is surging that are going down first. All right, we got a request for Austin, Texas, everyone, the city I used to live in, and the city that I think is in the biggest housing bubble in America. Oh boy, everyone, shield your eyes for what you're about to see in Austin, Texas. We have massive inventory surges everywhere. In particular, if we go to Williamson County, take a look at this zip code, everyone. 420% increase in inventory year over year. If we go out to Manor, 226% inventory increase year over year. Even if we go to a more urban zip code closer to Austin, 238% increase in inventory year over year. And especially if we head south into Hayes County, we're seeing 300% increase, 300% increase, 400% increase. So Austin is in the crash, everyone. Home prices are already going down in Austin. I would not touch that market with the 10-foot pole right now. Home prices are going to be going down much, much further. Okay, we got a request for a market very similar to Austin. Let's take a look at Raleigh, North Carolina. Another tech-driven market that was booming over the last couple years. But you can see, same story, everyone. We have maybe a tighter inventory situation like in the urban locations. In Wake County, inventory is still down quite a bit, but as soon as we head out to Cary, west of Raleigh, a 424% increase in inventory. If we go to Morrisville, a 283% increase in inventory. If we go to eastern Raleigh in Knightdale, we have a 491% increase in inventory. These areas are just getting hammered with empty homes sitting on the market, everyone, in a place like Raleigh. And while we're kind of on this tech trend, I'm going to go to Boise, Idaho, because I know I got some people in Boise, Idaho, and you need to see an example of another market that's just exploding, bursting at the seams of inventory in Boise. And this is just all across the board. 230%, 126%, 235% growth year over year. So just massive surges of inventory. And I'm going to get to more of your requests in a second. And if you're someone who wants access to this data and you're not a channel member yet, hit the join button below. My channel members have already had access to these graphs for the last couple days. The trend we need to talk about here, in addition to seeing less migration into pandemic boom towns and more home building, is that tech is crashing. The technology industry is crashing. And as a result, any city that was basing its housing demand and economic growth off tech expansion in the last couple of years is going to get hit really hard. That's why you're seeing Austin and Raleigh and Boise and Phoenix and Reno. That's why you're seeing these cities have such big surges of inventory, because in a lot of these cities, people who worked in tech were like half the home buyers. So now that there's tech layoffs and tech stocks have crashed many times by like 60-70%, this buyer pool is dwindling just as prices are at an all-time high, just as home builders are building a lot of homes. So be very careful if you're in a tech-driven city. We're going to continue to see inventory pile up over the next several months. All right, everyone, let's get back to requests. I see a Charlotte, North Carolina request. So we're going to go back to the southeast. Charlotte, North Carolina. What do we got in Charlotte, everyone? Well, can you guys spot the trend here? If you've been watching this, you're seeing the same thing play out. Like if we zoom in on Charlotte, we can see urban locations down on inventory, wealthy suburbs directly to the south down on inventory. But if we go a little bit north, folks, we have a sea of blue. Inventory exploding in cities like Huntersville. If we go up to Stanley and Gaston County, if we go down to Rock Hill in South Carolina, a 95% increase in inventory. So, I know a lot of these places in Charlotte were big pandemic exodus areas. Not as many people are moving in. They're building a lot of homes. The inventory is piling up in Charlotte. What about a market like Greenville? I saw Greenville mentioned. That's just not too far down the road here. Let's take a look at Greenville, South Carolina, folks, and stick with me if I haven't covered your city. I'm going to cover it soon. Similar story, only difference in Greenville is we can see some absolutely epic inventory surges in some more suburban and rural locations, like 480% year over year, 265% year over year, 700%. It went from 1 to 8. Still a pretty big increase, but the urban area in Greenville inventory is still down. What about if we move to the Northeast, everyone? I know people complain I don't talk enough about the Northeast, so let's go to Boston. Let's take a trip shipping up to Boston, as they say. And interestingly, you can see a lot of differences here in Boston in terms of where inventory is increasing or decreasing. So let's zoom in a little bit. Inventory in 02116, which is the zip code I used to work in when I had a job in institutional real estate investment, inventory is down 10% in this urban Boston zip code. We can see still kind of down in some of the urban areas, but if we go to some suburbs out in Newton, inventory is up. If we go to some suburbs way out there in Stowe or Sudbury, inventory is way up. And then if we head up towards like northern Massachusetts into Lowell, Dunstable, we're seeing inventory increase, but it's still kind of sporadic, everyone. You can see certain areas are blue, certain areas are orange, but Boston is a metro in general that I would be cautious in right now because it's heavily tech exposed. Heavily tech exposed in Boston, as is San Francisco. So let's take a look at San Francisco, everyone. Another tech hub, and oh boy, lots of blue, but what's interesting is like everyone focuses just on kind of the downtown San Francisco area, which does have some inventory increases, as well as down to like San Mateo County where Silicon Valley is. But look at the East Bay, everyone. Look at like, Alameda County near Oakland, 178% inventory increase. If we head up towards like Martinez and Richmond, we have big inventory increases. In Antioch and Pittsburgh, we have 100 to 200% inventory increases. Folks, these areas got slammed in the East Bay in the last housing crash. They're going to get slammed again. I think all of San Francisco is in deep trouble. Redfin just came out with a report saying the Bay Area is the fastest slowing housing market in America. I think values might already be down by 10%. I would not be buying in the Bay Area right now. All right, let's see. We actually got a question, everyone, a question from Lynn. I'm going to get to more of your requests in a second, but she says, why is inventory staying low in urban areas? That's a great question. I think it all has to do with a pandemic shift in migration, right? We had a lot of people leave urban areas during the pandemic, maybe more people than actually, wanted to leave those areas. And now we have people moving back in to the urban locations. And so I think the way to think about that is like during 2020 and 2021, very important you guys understand this, probably like too many people moved to rural Texas or suburban Tennessee or suburban Florida. Like those are locations which maybe were affordable, but they don't offer a lot of lifestyle value. And now that the pandemic is over and those places are expensive, I think people are selling out of the suburbs and rural areas, moving back towards the urban areas. So that's the trend I think we're seeing, in addition to differences in home building. All right, everyone, what's up next? How about we got Ventura, California. I'm going to move down to SoCal because I know I got a lot of people watching in California. Let's see, I guess Ventura is called Oxnard as well. Some of these metro areas have multiple names, hard for me to remember sometimes. So if we zoom in here, we can see Ventura up a little bit on inventory, but Oxnard, we have some zip codes that are way up on inventory. This was obviously a huge exodus area. People from LA moved here during the pandemic. I think fewer people are moving there now. Just take a look at this, everyone. If we shift over to Los Angeles, you're not going to believe what you're about to see here in LA. Ooh boy. All right, so take a look at this northern part of LA Metro, up to the San Fernando Valley and Santa Clarita and up to Lancaster. 100% plus inventory surges over the last year, and I'm almost positive, you could tell me if you're in this area, lots of people probably moved here from central LA during the pandemic. They are no longer moving there, which is why inventory is surging. Now, if we zoom in more on denser parts of LA, like Santa Monica and West Hollywood, and Hollywood, inventory is down actually 40% year over year. So that's the people moving back to LA. But if we go down to like some of the more, how do I say this, blue collar neighborhoods in like Inglewood and Torrance and Compton, inventory is going up. And if we go to Anaheim in northern Orange County, inventory is going up. So, in LA, there's a lot of different things happening, but the clear trend in all of these locations is that the areas people moved to during the pandemic, they're not moving to as much, and those locations have the biggest inventory surge. What about San Diego, everyone? What about San Diego? It's interesting. I think maybe San Diego might be like the #1 city that my viewers are in, because I see it requested all the time. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, everyone, but you see the trend, right? In San Diego, in these outward areas, 92131 up towards Poway, up towards Lakeside, pretty big increase in inventory. But if we zoom in on like downtown San Diego, Mission Hills, inventory is still going down. So this is a trend. It's amazing whether we're in San Diego or Dallas. This is a trend that's playing out of the empty home pileup really occurring in these outlying locations, and then the urban areas are still tight. Now I'm going to move back to the southeast, everyone. I hope that's okay with you, because we got a lot of cities still to cover. Stick with me if I haven't covered your city yet, and even if I have covered your city, still stick with me, because you can learn a lot by looking at a market like Atlanta, which is what we're looking at right now. And Atlanta is one of the most, what I call, bifurcated housing markets in America, where we have just huge differences occurring across the metro in different locales. So if we zoom in, kind of urban Atlanta, kind of wealthy northern suburbs in Buckhead, inventory is down 40%. But if we go south to some of these like more suburban zips in Clayton County that have a lot of investors, inventory is doubled. And it's almost funny. It's almost like a smile, right? Like we have this smile area where inventory is still going down in Atlanta, but then everywhere else is in blue. Paulding County, inventory up 190%. Gwinnett County, inventory up 113%. And so, again, I want you to think about, these are the areas where there's lots of home building, where people are not moving to as much now that the pandemic's in the rearview mirror. So that's the situation in Atlanta. What about the situation in Sarasota, or I should say Northport, Sarasota, Florida? This is actually an area I was just driving through last week. Some of you know I took a trip to Florida a couple weeks ago to see how crazy that housing market's getting. And Oh boy, I mean, we got some pretty juicy inventory gains in southern Sarasota County, 215% in Venice, 174% in Nokomis, 168% in Sarasota. The more you get up towards Bradenton, the next, kind of the less the inventory is going up, but basically all in Northport inventory is surging. I actually want to go now down to Cape Coral, everyone, because this is a market that I actually got a taste of for the first time. I drove through Cape Coral when I was in Florida 2 weeks ago. I specifically drove through this area, 33914. Inventory is up 107%. And I gotta be honest, folks, I do not understand this housing market. I think a massive housing crash is coming for Cape Coral because like this is a city, a metro, a county in Lee County where they're building like as many homes as they did in the mid 2000s, it seems like. Everywhere I turned, there was just like a new ugly brick construction home that was like 1,200 square feet that I'm like, why would anyone want to live here? So I feel like I'm very bearish on Lee County, Cape Coral. You can see the inventory is already surging significantly over the last year or so. Now we got another question, everyone. I'm gonna get to more requests, but someone's asking about COVID case numbers. So with COVID case numbers going up, are some of these things gonna change? And specifically, will condo prices go down and will single family home prices remain the same is the question. And I'm gonna be honest, folks, I don't think COVID case numbers are gonna matter much anymore. I'm not trying to say the pandemic isn't a big deal, but it seems to me like people have moved on largely from the pandemic, and now the economy and inflation is the big thing that society cares about. So I don't really think we're gonna see lockdowns again, or at least I hope not. I think most people, even if they were freaked out by COVID, now are vaccinated or stopped caring. They don't really wear masks on planes anymore. So I think, COVID is largely in the rearview mirror in terms of its impact on the housing market. And the thing to understand also is this, like the migration that occurred during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, I believe it pulled forward migration from future years. And so what that means is like, for instance, I moved from New York to Texas in 2020. Now, I think I would have eventually made that move anyway. But maybe in a future year like 2022 or 2023 or 2024, but because of the pandemic, I made that move in 2020, which means that I am not available to make that move in a future year. So I think we might see a long-term demand vacuum in some of these counties that were big pandemic migration counties. Like we might have used up all the people who were set to move there over a course of 5 years. We might have stuffed them into 2 years. And thus, even if like mortgage and interest rates go down, I don't think we're gonna see a bounce back in demand for a lot of these locations for quite some time. All right, everyone, so that's my opinion on the pandemic and how it affects real estate. Let's get 5 more requests. I have time for 5 more requests. How about we get Nashville, Tennessee, everyone? Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee is a really interesting market. So is Nashville, because we're seeing some epic explosions of inventory here. Williamson County to the south in Nashville, one of the wealthiest counties in America, 141% increase in inventory, 165% increase in inventory. We're seeing 100 spots in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, which was a big migration area. If we go north into Sumner County, 150% increase in inventory. Now, if we zoom in, if we zoom in on Davidson County and the Gulch and some of these areas down here, inventory is still down, or it's not up by as much. So again, this is the same trend. A lot of people left urban Nashville during the pandemic. People are moving back to urban Nashville now, which is why inventory is still down. But more broadly, folks, when you see the sea of blue, it means that the market in general is going down, right? Eventually, all of this stuff in the suburbs is gonna filter through to the urban area because there's gonna be huge price cuts. It's gonna push some people back out. All right, everyone. Someone's requesting Boise. I covered that earlier in the video. Okay, what about St. Louis? St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you, Brendan. Let's see, St. Louis, Missouri. Let's get some Midwest action here, folks. Midwest action. Interesting. St. Louis, a Midwest town where inventory is up in some areas, down in other areas. And if we kind of zoom in here, we can see, around the urban area in some of these nicer suburbs to the west, like Wildwood, inventory is still down. But if we go more rural inventory is up. And so St. Louis is a market which is not really in its like crash stage yet. The fact that you see so much orange on this map means that we need more months. We need some more months of inventory increases to get back to a level where the home buyer has some power in a place like St. Louis. You'll notice a stark contrast though. When we go from St. Louis to Riverside, California, look at how the color of the map changes. Wow. Riverside, California is all in blue, everyone. And of course, Riverside was, and San Bernardino was a big pandemic exodus location for people from LA. Not as many people are moving there anymore, which is why in San Bernardino County, we have pretty big inventory increases. Even if we go to like parts of Palm Springs, even these nice vacation areas, we have big inventory increases. And so Riverside, that's a market that got crushed in the last housing crash. I think it's going to get hit pretty hard again. Why don't we actually zoom up? I saw a request for Sacramento earlier. Let's get a Sacramento request in here because it's a similar situation. Like, Riverside is to LA like Sacramento is to San Francisco. And we're seeing lots of big inventory increases across the Sacramento metro area, particularly in El Dorado County out east, 196% increase in inventory, 81% increase in Placer County. If we zoom in, we actually see northern Sacramento County. We have some pretty big inventory increases. I believe if we take a look at Stockton, this would be a similar situation just to the south. If we take a look at Stockton, yeah, folks, sea of blue. It's a sea of blue everywhere tangential to the Bay Area because tech is in the toilet. And if tech's in the toilet, all of these housing markets are going to struggle. Let's go to Oklahoma City, everyone. You know that this is a personal favorite housing market of mine, everyone. Oklahoma City, a city I almost moved to before I moved to Dallas. And we see probably one of the biggest bifurcated situations in a place like Oklahoma City where urban OKC, and there's a lot of cool markets and neighborhoods here in urban OKC, inventory is down 44, 43%, still pretty tight in some of these urban OKC markets. But if we head out to like Canadian County out in Yukon, 136% increase in inventory. A lot of that has to do with home building. Most of the home building in OKC is out here. That's why inventory is increasing so much. And folks, I'm going to take 2 more requests. But before I take those requests, I want to address a comment that I see a lot on my YouTube channel, and I see a lot of realtors and real estate investors say this phrase. They say that despite the surge in inventory and price cuts, it's no big deal because inventory is still low. These realtors, these real estate investors, they will tell you that we're not in a housing crash because the total housing stock of inventory on the market is still lower than it is pre-pandemic. And I just want to point this out to you guys that this is the incorrect way to look at this housing market. I'm going to use Texas as an example so you can see what I'm talking about. So right now in Texas, across the entire state, there's 57,000 homes actively on the market in June, which is technically below where it was in 2019. It would be accurate to say that inventory is still historically low in Texas. However, folks, that's not the point. The point is that over the last 2 months in Texas, the month-over-month inventory surges have been 10 and 11,000 month over month, which is by far a record. Like you can see on this Realtor.com data going back, the previous monthly surge in inventory record in Texas was 6,000. We just hit 11,000 in June. So a couple more months of this plus 11,000 and our active inventory levels in Texas will be back to pre-pandemic levels. And so, this is the question that you need to ask yourself if you're a home buyer right now who's seriously considering buying. Do you care more about what the active inventory levels are on the market compared to 3 years ago? Or do you care more about the incredible surge, the historic surge we are seeing in inventory month over month? That's going to mean you're going to have even more homes to choose from in coming months. You're going to have even more price cuts to choose from. Because folks, in 3 to 4 months, this housing market is history. It's toast. Like we're already seeing in Phoenix and Vegas and Austin and Reno, like those housing markets are toast. But the entire housing market is going to be viewed as in a housing crash in the next 3 to 4 months if inventory keeps this up, which I believe it will due to all the home building, due to the recessionary pressures. So I just wanted to point that out, folks. What matters more is not how inventory today compares to 2019. It's how much inventory is surging each month and how much it will continue to surge in the future, because that's going to mean you as a home buyer are going to have better options going forward than you do today. So with that said, everyone, let me take my last two requests. Last two requests, everyone. So let's get some good ones here. Let's get some good ones. Okay, what do we got? What do we got, everyone? St. George, Utah. Let's do St. George, Utah. If you guys don't know where St. George, Utah is, I'm going to tell you where it is. It's in southwest Utah, and I actually have a personal story about St. George, Utah. Me and some friends went there in 2018. You can see it here on the map. Inventory is going crazy, plus 130%, plus 200% year over year, plus 96%. Me and my friends rented some jet skis in St. George, Utah in 2018, and we actually crashed them. We didn't crash them, we damaged them lightly. And the owner of the jet ski shop tried to sue us for $13,000 for repairs for jet skis that were worth less than $8,000 in total. We eventually whittled that down to like $3,000, but that's what I'm always going to remember about St. George, Utah, the fact that I almost got hit with a $13,000 bill for jet ski damage, and the fact that inventory is surging in St. George, Utah right now. So what else do we got? How are we going to end this? We're going to end this on Seattle, Washington, everyone. And just as we're ending this, folks, remember, all this data is available to my channel members. Make sure you check out the community board. Have your notifications for emails turned on. I post these graphs once per month for my channel members on zip code and county level inventory. And if you want access to this stuff, hit the join button below. All right, so we're looking at Seattle right now, and you can see that this is just a deluge of inventory. I mean, like, look at Snohomish County, 230% increase, 230% increase in Everett. I mean, these 283% increase in Marysville. These outlying counties in the Seattle metro are just getting hammered. And of course, we know that this is due to the pandemic migration shift. We know this is due to home building. We also know that this is due to the tech collapse because Seattle is a tech city. You know, and if we go to basically any outlying suburban area in Seattle, inventory is exploding. And like pretty much every other city in America, if we zoom in on the urban locations, inventory is still down year over year, likely because, you know, people are moving back to the urban locale. But folks, make no mistake, eventually what's happening out here in the suburban areas when you see this like sea and wall of blue with so much inventory going up year over year, that's going to crash the entire housing market when it's this consistent. So just make sure to remember that. All right, everyone. Until next time, this is Nick from Reventure Consulting signing off. If you're a channel member and I missed your request, I'm going to leave a post on the community